Chair, I can confirm you are live on YouTube.
Lauren, sorry, I lost connection for a second. Are we okay?
Yeah, I can confirm you're live on YouTube.
Thank you.
Well, can everybody hear me okay? Everybody can hear me okay, good. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for attending today's meeting on this rather murky evening, November's evening. We are, of course, the King's Lynn Area Consultative Committee. The Democratic Services Officer will conduct a roll call to check who is present at tonight's meeting. When she calls out your name, could you please switch your microphone on and confirm your attendance by answering present? And now I'll ask the officer to conduct that roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bambridge?
Present.
Councillor Bone?
Present.
Councillor Collop, John Collop? Councillor Sandra Collop?
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Dickinson and Councillor Howman and Councillor Hudson. So Councillor Jones?
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Joyce. Councillor Kemp?
Present.
Councillor Lowe? Oh, we have apologies from Councillor Lowe, sorry. Councillor Rust?
Present.
Councillor Tyler?
Present.
And apologies from Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll move on to item 2, which is, of course, the minutes of the previous meeting. And I'm going to ask you all if you are in agreement with the minutes of that previous meeting, which was held on September 27th this year. Can you agree the minutes, please?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. And I'm going to ask you all if there is anybody here present that has interests to declare. No? No? Okay. Thanks for that, everybody. This evening under item 4, I have no urgent business. So item 5, and we haven't apparently this evening any members present under Standing Order 34. Item 6, my correspondence, I have none this time. And now we move on to item 7, which is the Parish Partnership Scheme section. And we're going to ask John Green, who will present the report, which has been published, in fact, as a supplement. And then I will invite, of course, members to ask questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And I can't see Councillor Rust, but I think you are there, aren't you? So, Councillor Rust, are you okay in a minute if I ask you to say a few words? Yeah, thank you. Okay, very, very briefly then, the Parish Partnership Scheme has been mentioned at previous meetings, and I think members are aware of the process. I probably don't need to go through that. Obviously, if anybody's got any queries, ask them at the end. What we have at the moment is one proposal that has been completed and sent to me, and I've got that in front of me, and that's a proposal from Councillor Rust, and that is for a bus shelter, which, and Councillor Rust will be able to explain a little bit more in a minute, which is near to the hospital, but on Gayton Road. And for those who know that area, you come out of the hospital, and if you if you drove out and you turn right as if you're heading slightly back into Lynn, there's a service road round the back, and it's pretty much opposite there. At the moment, there's just a bus stop. There's no actual shelter, and that area is often, because not all the buses, as you know, go into the hospital. Some because of time constraints. Some of the buses just go straight along Gayton Road, and therefore you have patients, staff, and visitors who will often have been to the hospital and then they're having to stand in an unsheltered bus stop. So Councillor Rust has done quite a bit of work, and I'll ask if Councillor Rust can explain that in a minute. So what's been proposed is well, I'll let Councillor Rust explain what it's going to look like. Support has been offered for this from the relevant county councillor, that's County Colwell, who's offered £2,000 from his members' allowance. The parish partnership scheme works as such so that 50%, if approved, is met by the county council. So this costs about £8,500 roughly. It's not the exact figure. So if approved by the county council, then the borough via special expenses would have to find half of that. And doing your maths, with £2,000 already paid by Councillor Colwell, that reduces that down even further. That's all on the report. We've got Michelle, our finance officer, who can just explain perhaps in a minute. Do you want to do that now, Michelle, actually, rather than me carry on? Just explain the effect on special expenses. Then after that, then if Councillor Rust can then perhaps just talk a little bit about the scheme herself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we do have a special expenses report as the next item on the agenda, so this is reflected in that as well. But just in terms of the 2,300 that would be left to be found to go through special expenses, this would equate to £460 per annum over the next 5 years. And that works out as a calculation of around 4.3 pence per band D equivalent against the proposed tax base of 10,768, and that's for the next financial year. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. There is a recommendation at the end of this, but if I let Councillor Rust speak now, do you just want to talk a little bit about how it came to you and the benefit for the public and that side of it? Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Thank you, John. And I would also like to thank the officers because they've worked incredibly quickly over this matter. One of my residents, Anne Roberts, who some of you might know, she used to work at the college, and her sister's Jill Bennett, actually. She approached me because she felt that there was a need for a bus shelter at that point. As John has pointed out, that bus stop is used by patients and staff of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, many of whom have done a long shift and they're standing outside exposed, nowhere to lean or to prop themselves up. And so I thought that it was a really good idea, one that I was happy to take forward. There are down by the Springwood entrance, Springwood High School, Queensway, there's a bus shelter there which is really well used and got some good facilities. And because we're so often at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital doing our demos, I see firsthand how frequently that bus stop is also used. So I know that it would be a much welcome shelter for those that use it. It's going to have 3 panels with a roof and sides, and it will have I think it's just called like a shelf or a ledge as opposed to proper seats, but it will mean that people can rest while they're waiting for the bus there. And as I said, the officers have worked incredibly quickly over it so that we're able to get it through this year. I approached my newly elected county councillor and I thought that it was excellent news that he was willing to use some of his funds to go towards it, because obviously it reduces the burden on council taxpayers from the borough council. So all in all, I think we've got a really good deal in a really short space of time. I do hope that you will support it. Thank you.
Okay, if I can come back Councillor Tyler, and then before we have a few questions.
We'll have one, I think.
Yeah. Just quickly, so at the bottom of the sheet is a recommendation that because you'll be aware that following this, if CLAC is to approve this, and the minutes of this meeting will show that those minutes are printed and then sent to the Cabinet for Cabinet to give the final decision because of the financial implications. Please tell me if I've got any of this wrong, Kathy. Yeah, so the recommendation is CLAC considers whether to support the scheme, and that secondly, because as Councillor Russ said, this has been done at breakneck speed. If there are any, and I'm talking minor adjustments, so if it was to cost 50 quid more, for example, then because of some minor adjustment, then the chair, that's you, Councillor Tyler, would be able to approve that because we don't have time to come back and have another formal meeting. So that's the recommendation. If that, if agreed, then that sort of caps that off, and we'll go to Cabinet, which is Tuesday. Yeah, right. So, yeah. Do you want to do questions first and then for agreement?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Yes, I'll ask a question. I think Councillor Bambridge and then Councillor Mrs. Collop. So, Leslie.
Thank you, Chairman. Is it going to have a green roof, please? When we had a meeting maybe a year or more ago, I asked if we could have green roofs on bus shelters in the future. Living roofs, I mean.
Whether it's green, is that the question? Yeah.
I think.
Well, is it going to be planted on the roof which is good for the environment?
That I don't know the answer to that.
Chairman, that we, having asked when we discussed bus shelters in general terms, I think it was when you were looking for one, Alex, that I asked if they could now be considered to have green roofs because it is good for the environment. Perhaps we could do that in the future. I'm not against this at all. Use those bus shelters or the other bus shelter.
Yeah, I think if I can be honest, I think probably the breakneck speed of this and this one application is such that we probably haven't got time to factor that in for this occasion, but that we note it for future applications. Yeah, I was going to, Peter Gray, who works for Property Services, manages these applications. So I will need to talk to Peter about making sure that as he approves these in the future, that is taken into account. I won't have time for this one.
And I'm not certain, I don't know if members are here or officers, of the availability of the green roofs and what extra cost there would be. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got no issues against it, but I was just, I don't personally know. Councillor Mrs. Collop, yeah, Sandra, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask Councillor Rush, you say the service road, do you mean the road where you go down to the chemo unit? Is that what they class as the service road? It is, right, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we look at the recommendation for this first. There is a point raised by Councillor Kemp, but should we deal with this first and then we can pick that up afterwards? Yeah. So do you want to put the recommendation through, Councillor Tyler?
Right. So the recommendations are that the CLAC considers whether to support the scheme and the proposal to be paid through special expenses over a period of 5 years, and that myself, with the support of the Chief Finance Officer, be delegated to approve minor changes after the CLAC meeting on November the 11th, or tonight. And I thank you, John, for the report and your guidance on this.
Ask everybody if they're happy with that.
Yes. So with what I've said so far, are you all happy with those recommendations? What I've suggested. Everybody happy? Yeah. Right. Councillor John Collop, are you happy?
Yes, I think.
Yeah, right.
We need hands up a bit longer and a bit higher.
Well, yes, but everybody.
Right. Are you okay if I just make a comment about Councillor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Councillor Dickinson, I think the question was asked as to whether, you haven't got your hand up, but whether you had a question or otherwise. If I can just come back now. So this afternoon, Councillor Kemp contacted me about a scheme in South Lynn that at the moment isn't ready, but Councillor Kemp has done some work which she can explain briefly in just a moment. What Councillor Kemp is asking is whether she, and really it's your discretion as chair, as to whether she can raise this and we take a view based on the limited information that we do have, and that after the meeting, Councillor Kemp would then have to do some work with Peter Gray to kind of develop the proposal. So that's the question that Councillor Kemp has asked me. So
Yes.
It's really your. Should we? Do you think we should, if we allow Councillor Kemp to explain?
Oh yes.
And then you can take a view.
Yes,
yeah?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Please, Councillor Kemp. Please go ahead, Alex. And,
Thank you, Chair. Well, yes, as everybody knows, it's very windy in South Lynn. You get the damp chill from the river, and waiting to get the bus outside the butcher's shop to go into town. Residents have said to me, they approached me in March and said, can't we have a bus shelter? So there's been quite a lot of work done by myself and officers. And we've drawn up a scheme, filled in the form, and Highway says it's completely viable to have a bus shelter there. And I've had a Teams meeting with the buses people, and obviously during COVID there have been a few technical hitches, but the forms are ready and the approvals are there. And it would cost £8,400, and I'm willing to contribute £2,000 from my member budget. I've also done a consultation with residents, 20 residents, and I've written to the police and I've got their approval from PC Hopkins, the beat manager. They've got no objections to it. So it's sort of shovel ready, and there's just been a technical hitch or two, which is why you haven't got the report before you. And I would like to put this to the vote. So subject to everything, the last sort of T being crossed and I being dotted, that we might be able to bring some comfort to cold and chilly people in South Lynn as soon as possible.
Right. Okay. So if I can answer that, I mean, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be honest here. This isn't shovel ready, and the reason for that is, as currently we don't have Norfolk County Council approval. We've got an email from the County Council to say that it's likely to be okay, but this was before the process, so we've not got formal approval. And Peter Gray, who manages the process, hasn't signed this off yet, so it's not ready. And I think Councillor Kemp and I met just briefly informally before the meeting, and I explained what she would need to do in order to process this. If I'd got this in time...
Just come back there to say that the dimensions have been filled in on the form. So in fact, the whole thing has been measured up. So that seems to be ready. Yeah.
So, but the process hasn't been followed, okay? But what I'm trying to do is to explain how we can try to find a resolution one way or the other. So if I can just finish. What we've got Michelle available, where I'd have had this in time, I could have found out the effect on special expenses, and that could be included in the report, and I don't have that. But whether, Michelle, whether you're able to give a view as to, you know, the effect on special expenses, but this would have to be referred to Cabinet as a in principle agreement if given, and there would be another effect, you know, a sort of effect of increasing special expenses and we don't have the exact amount at the moment. I know it's complicated, but I hope that makes sense. So, Michelle, I don't know if you want to give a view on what could happen as if this were approved in principle.
Yeah, obviously the report that I'm bringing next to you does reflect the scheme that we've already discussed. And just in relation to that, we're already looking at a 2.27% increase on special expenses, which is above the indicative 50 pence increase that we use as a threshold. Now that is taken into account across all of the special expenses that we give out to all parish and town councils. So the fact that we're already above that, we would be looking to offset that against the rest of the special expenses charges that we make. So this does raise concerns to me that we haven't reflected it, and it is going to mean that it's going to be a bit more challenging in terms of how we will meet that cap on our increase. And I think it's safe to say that with last year we were able to come or bring it back within target because of the issue with the South Lynn Community Centre, but we're not expecting to have that same issue in the next financial year. We're expecting that the South Lynn Community Centre will be reinstated into its previous use before the pandemic, so and be allowed to be used by the community again. So I do have some concerns around the financial implications that this does bring.
So thanks, Michelle. So to finish off for me, I think, Councillor Tyler, it's for you to decide whether you feel we could take an in-principle vote. If we did take a vote, the vote would be whether not to put this forward. If we agreed to put it forward, it would be on the proviso that I would be passing to Cabinet all the information I had available, and if it's not complete, that's what Cabinet would see before them. It would also be Michelle's view that she's just given now as to the finances. Again, it's undefined and we're not sure. So that may affect Cabinet's decision-making process. Obviously, that's for Cabinet to decide. But we can still take a vote if you think it's appropriate to send in principle. And between now and next Tuesday, we could do a bit of work if we can, to get some more information available. That's probably as best. It's complicated, I'm sorry, but I've tried to explain it the best I can.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yes, I have an idea to go forward, but I would, before I make my comments, I think we've got 3 people asking questions, so I'd like to take the questions. I think Councillor Bambridge was first. I think then Councillor Mrs. Collop, were you? Yeah, and there was somebody else, was there, or not? No? No, okay. Thank you. So, Councillor Bambridge, Leslie.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just looking through previous minutes to see when I asked for green roofs. I haven't come across it yet, but I did ask in June 2019 that we have solar lighting in bus shelters and also possibly cameras, and as a safety issue. So perhaps we can have those considered for either of the 2 bus shelters. Maybe not the quick one that but certainly in other areas where there's not much lighting anyway, please.
Okay. So
it is minuted on the June 19 minutes.
Okay. I mean, we can check those minutes, but I will be speaking to Peter.
Just check them, so.
All right. Yeah. Sorry. No, I'm not. I don't mean it in that. I just. I'm not aware of them myself. I probably wasn't in this role then, but I will speak to Peter about the green issue, and I will raise about cameras as well. Did you say something else?
Well, it was whether we could have cameras and solar lighting.
Solar lighting, yeah. Yeah, got that. Sorry, Councillor Bambridge.
Thank you for that. Councillor Collop, Sandra.
Thank you, Chair. Ever since we started this parish partnership, which was probably 4 or 5 years ago, Councillor Kemp has always put something forward, which is fair enough, but there is only once that she has said they've been told that she can't go ahead, which was, if I remember, a crossing at West Lynn. I feel that really there is other ward councillors that's never ever put anything forward. And so therefore, I'm afraid I can't support this.
But I would just make a comment that, of course, councillors have the free will to put their whatever they want forward. Yeah. So it's not, that is an issue for the councillors themselves, not officers or anybody else, in my view. But yeah, not your point.
My personal opinion, Chair, nobody else.
Now, so it would be Councillor Rust next. Joe.
Thank you. I would just like to commend Councillor Kemp for the fact that she put so many things forward on behalf of the people that elected her to represent them. And I think that she's actually somebody we should seek to emulate, because she does do so much for her residents of the ward. And so I think that it's our bad if we don't put things forward, and credit to her that she has.
I've got a partial solution, not to the Councillor Kemp's point, but again, this is just my personal view, but I'm happy to put it on record. I think it is a complicated process and the timescales are really tight, so they don't help members or officers to get this done in time. What I'm going to suggest is that we ask Peter to attend a future CLAC, and that we, and maybe a working group as opposed to the main meeting, and let's look at agreeing the process by which this is done and making sure that all members know how to do it, and that it is an agreed and hopefully more streamlined process, not just for bus shelters, but for any of the other highway furniture, because probably it is a bit complex. And I think Peter could perhaps just help a small working group, very much like the play area group, of 3 or 4 members, myself, Kathy to support, and Peter, and let's work a better way of making this a little bit more streamlined, because Councillor Rust is absolutely right. This is something that members could do, but I think the bureaucracy doesn't help, and we can make that a little bit better.
Yeah. Yes, I personally haven't a problem with that. And it is a case, I think, partly of motivating councillors to come forward. And if there are issues as to why they've not come forward with ideas, then obviously that would help. So that's good. Now, I see we've got Councillor Bambridge. Was there anybody else that was going to speak? Or is that, yeah, right?
Thank you. The minutes for where I mentioned the green roofs was on the 16th of January 2020. But I'd just like to remind everybody that we did get the speed awareness cameras on Tennyson Road and Vancouver Avenue as part of the Parish Partnership Scheme. So we have, it is elsewhere. That we,
yeah, absolutely.
And I did ask for a crossing on Tennyson Road, nothing to do with my ward, but that was going to be part of the transport. I can't, the transport plan. I'm going to call it a plan. It's a bit,
yes.
a bit less than a plan, but.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that, Leslie. Coming now, I mentioned I would like to don't like to call it a compromise, but I would like to personally feel or get the feeling from this meeting as to if in principle we would be in favour if the details, the finance, etc., was workable. At least in principle, whether we would have some sort of agreement to go forward, and then the details and so on to follow. So may I have a show of hands for people that would be in favour of that? What I've just said, that idea, that principle.
That was 6 votes for.
Yes. And those against, please. And any against, please? Yeah. Councillor Collop, Sandra Collop.
Okay, if I could just speak just briefly at the end then, for Councillor Kemp, what you need to do now is urgently speak to Peter Gray in order to further your what you're doing, and then we'll take it from there. Is that okay? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kemp. Thank you, John, very much. Right, we move on to item 8, which is the King's Lynn Special Expenses Report 2022-2023. And via the Zoom procedure, Michelle Drury will present the report, which has been updated, by the way, from the one that was published in the agenda, which was yesterday, as a supplement. So I will, of course, later invite members of the committee to ask any questions they have. And then I'll obviously will talk about the recommendation and so on. So I'll invite Michelle to present the report. Forgive me, but is Councillor Middleton to address the committee? Do we know, or is it?
He did say he was going to attend, but he's not here, so.
Thank you for that, Cathy, thank you. Right, okay, so there was the possibility that County Councillor Middleton, Graham Middleton.
He would have been here as just a borough councillor in his borough councillor role as deputy leader.
He would have come as deputy leader and borough councillor, but he hasn't appeared this evening. Right. So I'll invite now Michelle. After that preamble, could you please present the report for us?
Thank you, Chair. So you should have in front of you or access to the updated report as part of the agenda. So I'm sure you'll appreciate, in terms of trying to set out what the special expenses will be for the next financial year, this is coming at quite an early stage, as we haven't gone through the process of setting the council's budget yet. So trying to formulate and bring in the assumptions and review information that's available to us partway through the financial year, it does mean that there are a number of assumptions that are set out in the report in respect of the proposals to go forward. So for information only, you'll see at section 1.3 of the report which charges currently go through special expenses for King's Lynn. And then you'll see at 1.4 the charge and the breakdown that we used for the current financial year. So you've got that there for comparative purposes. Now, in the draft report that was originally sent out, I was just checking the Band D charge, because I had two different amounts presented to me, so I did need to go back and clarify the special expense charge that was actually implemented, and it was the £48.50. So you can see that in the current financial year, the increase on the previous year was £1.92, and that meant a percentage increase of 4.13%. Now, there were some implications around that, because, as you will be aware, the South Lynn Community Centre has had council staff occupying it because of the pandemic and the requirement to spread staff out to allow for safe working practices and reduce the risk of spread of COVID. So in respect of that, we have reduced the budget for South Lynn Community Centre as part of the reduction in recharges through special expenses to take that into account. So so that has been taken into consideration, and a view taken on that, in that we are anticipating that the staff will be relocating back to their previous place of work, and that the South Lynn Community Centre would be back to normal functions for the next financial year. Obviously, if that does change, then we would need to take a further view of that. But the council approves its budget at the end of February, so we would have some time to see and review that position before the council approves its budget, and any implications that arise from that we would hope to have reflect in the special expenses. And if that is not the case, then we would look to carry that out through the monitoring process and make any adjustments through monitoring. So it's not to say that that is set in stone. We have got some flexibilities around how we manage that going forward. So with regard to the next financial year, then we have got an estimated tax base of 10,768. So that is a small increase in terms of the current year. So the current year was based on 10,660. So that does allow for an increase in special expense or income in council tax that we can collect in relation to that council tax base. We have taken a view in terms of the charges that have been going through and made some assumptions around those increases that we're expecting to see. So for footway lighting, we're anticipating a charge of 44,980, and you'll see that that is a reduction of just over 4,000. Now, in the last figures, we did have an increase in respect of some planned refit around the lighting. We're currently expecting now that that will reduce back in line with previous year's spend. So at the moment, we still haven't got confirmed or clarification around that. So that is an assumption at this time. And if we haven't got any further information to build into this, so that would be something that if there is an increase that comes through as a result of those assumptions not being correct, then that will come through through the monitoring of special expenses in 22-23. So for play areas, there is an increase of 6,300. Generally, there has been an increase in the repairs and maintenance costs anyway, so that has to be reflected in those costs that we're passing through special expenses. There has also been an increase in costs relating to COVID compliance measures that we've had to implement across play areas. But just to note that that part of the work was funded by COVID grant that we did receive. So the increases that you're seeing are in line with general increases that we're expecting to fall through. With the community centres, you'll see that that has been reinstated back to 51,650. So that has been reinstated to its previous budgets with some small uplifts. As I explained, that is because we're expecting that the community centre will be back to its normal use. There are some areas, so closed churchyards, pavilions, dog bins and public conveniences. So they have all increased, but they have just been increased by inflationary percentages across those areas. Open spaces, there's been a significant reduction on open spaces, so that's just under 17,000. And that is because there's been a removal of a site located at Salters Road, and there's also been a review undertaken around the tractor cutting activity. So we now know that the plans align with maintenance of the grounds across the areas identified on the Kings Lynn area. And then for bus shelters, there is a net reduction of 2,200. Now the bus shelters does include the proposed bus shelter scheme that was discussed earlier in this meeting, so that 2,300 is included in there. Sorry, the 2,300 is split over the 5 years, so it's the 1 year element of that 2,300 that's been included in there. And the other, the net reduction is because we are seeing now an increase in bus shelter income, which is being derived from advertising activity, which is now back and being utilised, and we expect that that will continue into the next financial year as well. So that results in a total charge as special expenses of £534,120. Against the tax base of £10,768, that works out at a Band D equivalent charge of £49.60 for the next financial year. So that is an increase of £1.10 over the current Band D charge, which equates to 2.27% increase. So 2.4 sets out implications around the revenue support grant. So in the current year, we did have a reduction to reflect the council tax support grant being passed on to parish and town councils. And this was a result because of the council receiving a one-year settlement from government. However, and that one-year settlement was on the back of central government not being able to continue with its proposed reforms around the fair funding review and the business rates retention schemes and new homes bonus schemes, etc., because of the impact of the pandemic. So those reforms were deferred, and as a result of that, we received a one-year settlement. And that included continuation of the revenue support grant for 1 year. But at this point in time, we don't know what our settlement figures are going to be, or any indication of whether we're going to receive any such grant as part of that. And because of the constraints that we have seen as a council and the impact of the pandemic on us as well, there is a decision that we are not going to be passing on any council tax support grant through to offset special expenses going forward. So it's been necessary to remove that element from the calculation because of those reasons that I've set out. So the other area to be mindful of is that we have based the proposals on the basis that we would be able to increase our council tax by £5. Now, as part of the budget that was set out at the end of October, there was mention of a 2% increase in council tax with a 1% increase for those councils that have social care responsibilities, but there was no confirmation of whether district or borough councils would have the flexibility to increase by the 2% or £5, which we have had flexibility of in previous years. Now, whilst it's not out in the public domain, I am aware that a Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities Forum, that was confirmed verbally that we would still see that £5 flexibility offered to us. So at this stage, without having that confirmation announced publicly, we're still assuming that we will have that flexibility. But we will need to ensure in terms of affordability, that we can remain within that £5 limit in terms of our council tax when we come to setting and agreeing the budget at council at the end of February. So as mentioned, we have got the one new scheme that has been incorporated into these figures, which was set out in the report that John presented to you earlier. So those figures have been set out to you, and they are repeated in this report as well. Now, the financial implications will depend on what recommendations you make to Cabinet. At section 4.2, I do have an amendment to make on the figures that are set out there, because the second sentence where it says this would the proposed bus shelter scheme, if it was deemed that we were not going to put that forward, then the impact of that being removed from here would reduce the increase from £1.10 to 89 pence. That's not correct, because that 89 pence was based on the full figure of 2,300. It's actually the 1/5 of that we need to bring into that calculation. So, and as mentioned, it's the 4.3 pence on the per bandy equivalent, so that if it was removed from here, it would bring that down to £1.06, and the percentage would go from 2.27% to 2.19%. So that's just an amendment to those figures to reflect that 1/5 charge through there. So, but obviously you're recommending that that goes through anyway. So what I would add is in respect of the conversation around the additional scheme that has been discussed, that there is going to be a knock-on implication to those figures again as a result of that. So I will need to see those figures and work those through the calculations in order to work out what the revised figures would be that we're presenting to Cabinet for special expenses. And then the third area is that if we look as though we are exceeding that £5 council tax referendum limit that we are waiting for confirmation of, that we may need to make further adjustments or amendments to ensure that we bring the figures back in line with that limit. The implication of that is if we don't contain our increases within that limit, then we are subject to go to referendum, and that entails a lot of administration and a lot of cost in terms of seeking consultation on that, that I'm sure members would not want to support. So that's the implication set out. In relation to that, then I will stop talking and I will hand over for any questions.
Thanks very much indeed, Michelle. Much appreciated for that presentation. Are there from the committee any questions, please? I've got Councillor John Collop, and then I've got Councillor Alex next. So John, please.
It's on, yeah. They won't be able to, can he? Yeah.
Right. Try that.
What thank you. Right.
Start again. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Please
okay.
start again.
Yeah.
Not nothing.
Yeah.
I don't think it was your. So please go ahead.
Yeah. I'm just looking at bus shelters and public conveniences, and I'm just wondering the numbers that are involved in that. I've probably been here a few years as a councillor, but I'm just trying to get the figures in my head of how much, how many bus shelters we do have and how many conveniences and dog bins as well. Is that possible? I can take you can send me the information if you would. If it's not totally.
Yes, yeah, I'm afraid I don't have that information, as I'm sure you would expect. So can I just clarify, it's the number of bus shelters, the number of public conveniences and the number of dog bins.
Yes.
Yeah, I see Councillor Collop's point. It's just to give an idea of how that expense is spread.
Yeah, that's completely fine. I'll take that back and I'll find that information out for you and I'll send that across. Can I just clarify, do you want me to send it to all of the CLAC members?
Yes.
Thank you.
Will everybody receive that information, Michelle, please?
Yes, we'll send that to you all.
Thanks for that. Thanks for the question, John. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to know a little bit more about the potential for generating income. And I'm aware that with advertising on bus shelters, we usually make an income for the unparished area, and that there was obviously a drop during COVID in that funding. Could you clarify how much we're making at the moment from the from advertising on our bus shelters or elsewhere in the town that's in this little pot? And how much income can be generated per bus shelter per annum? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. So again, I will have to take that question back and come back with those answers. So I'll include this as one email covering both points to everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I think that is information that would be useful, and we need.
Just a quick on the bus shelters. I've discovered in the last week, as I've been sorting some of these bits and pieces out, that if the bus shelter is to take adverts, it's a slightly different design. And so we have to get that in place at the beginning. So going back to the point when I answered Councillor Bambridge's question, I need to talk to Peter about how we make members aware much earlier in the process. So if we are looking at new bus shelters, we get them suitable for advertising right from the beginning, because otherwise you can't, it doesn't work.
No.
I wasn't aware of that, but we will make sure that members are advised of that, along with the point about the solar and the cameras and the green and all that, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's information that we really need, isn't it?
I understand as well in relation to that if we do advertise on bus shelters that we're subject to business rates.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And we need that information as well, don't we?
Of course, yes.
If you're looking for a new scheme where you're looking to generate income from advertising, we would need to account for any cost of business rates that would offset against it. So, as well as other maintenance and other costs that may be attached to it.
Yeah. Councillor Kemp, Alex, yeah.
A very quick follow-up, Chair, if I may. Is it possible to establish, question for Michelle, whether we do make a net gain from putting advertising on bus shelters, as we've just been made aware we would be paying business rates?
Yeah, okay, yes, I'll follow that up along with your other questions on bus shelters.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Any other questions before we move on? No? Right. Okay. In that case, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Michelle, John, and so on. We'll move on to item 9 on the agenda, which is the appointment of, we hope, a member to this committee for the planning subgroup. So the CLAC planning subgroup meets, and the group meets to consider and make comments on major planning applications for King's Lynn. Councillor Kemp, Alex Kemp, wishes to stand down from the group, and therefore we are seeking a new member. And so I'm going to now invite nominations from the committee, please. So do we have any nominations to replace the absence of Alex Kemp from the committee, please? Do we have any nominations? No. Yeah, Councillor Kemp.
In the absence of nominations, I would be prepared to stay on the subcommittee, Chair.
Right. Well, thank you for that. Are there any other nominations or comments before Councillor Sandra Collett?
The only issue I have, Chair, is if there is 2 independents, which I'm quite, it's quite happy with that. But if one of those can't attend, am I right in saying that we need someone from the independent group to sub them, which there are no more independent councillors on the CLAC?
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll have an answer from Kathy, and then I think Alex wants to come back.
Yeah, Councillor Collop, any substitute would have to be from the same party. Yeah.
If we've got both the independent councillors on the CLAP group, or Councillor Kemp or Councillor Rust couldn't attend, we are then short again, and we then can't get the quorum.
Yeah, I think Councillor Kemp was before Joe, and then Councillor Rust. So Councillor Kemp, Alex first. Then.
Yes, thank you. This did arise because of substitution, and could we have clarification, please, from the monitoring officer or whoever might be available? Why, as this is a non-political group, should we be not able to nominate other members of the group to substitute, and why should it have to be from a particular group, or as the case might be a non-group?
Right, thank you.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. I think we'd have to check that with the monitoring officer. Yeah.
Right. So that will be checked, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Rust, next, I think.
Thank you. I would like to point out that Councillor Kemp is not part of the independent group. So there is a difference. So in matter of fact, yes, you know, Alex is independent, so she would have to sub for herself, unless Councillor Howman or Councillor Howland wanted to do it.
There's a silence to go on that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please. Yes.
Oh,
sorry. Do you want to come back on that, Alex?
Yes. Brief point. The Constitution, I don't believe, covers this point, and surely it's for this committee to make its own rules. If it wishes any member to substitute, why can't it do that? And I would be happy to propose that, Chair, with your agreement for a vote, so that we are more flexible.
My answer is that I don't know. I mean, your previous question was about checking with the monitoring officer, which we can do, but obviously we can't do that now. My suggestion is, on the face of this, is a straightforward request to replace you, Councillor Kemp, and if you're saying you'll stay on there, then in a way that's that job done, isn't it? You're saying you'll carry on, and nobody else wants to apply. So we could, based on that. That's a decision agreed, and then we will do that work in the background.
I'll obviously take the points from everybody. I tend to agree with John at the moment. In the period that will follow, when we need to really find out what the legal position is, as it were, then Councillor Kemp would continue in that interim period. But anyway, there are still more questions. I'm a bit lost as to who was next. I'll take Councillor Sandra Collop anyway. Sorry if I've got that wrong, but.
Okay, thank you. We did have this situation, I think it was a couple of meetings ago, where there was 2 people that couldn't attend this particular meeting. Leslie was unfortunately ill. She would come along, but we decided to cancel the meeting. I had to come into the council chamber to start and cancel the meeting, which I felt was a bit unfair. I couldn't do it over Zoom. So, and I was told by Democratic Services that we have to have someone from that particular group. We weren't, because Councillor Collop said he would be sub. I think Alex remember that. And they said he wasn't allowed because he wasn't part of independent. So this situation to me should have been sorted out before, if not ready for this meeting, but it hasn't been. And we have a meeting coming up on the 23rd. So it needs to be sorted out fairly quickly.
Thanks for that, Sandra. Yeah, Councillor Bambridge, Leslie.
Well, just to say that when I couldn't come, then there's a choice of two people, one of whom is at university and isn't around during the day, and the other's on screen now. So it would be, it could happen more often. You know, it's a ridiculous situation, quite frankly.
Sorry, Francis, did you have a question? Sorry, I didn't mean to bypass you.
Joe already got there. It's to say Councillor Heyman could stand in for the independents, but I'm in agreement. This is a little bit ridiculous. Planning is a non-political actual committee, so why can't we just have anyone to make the numbers?
If I can, because I think probably this, on the basis of this, it's a straightforward request, and Councillor Kemp said she'll stay on. So that, as you say, that covers that. You've all made a point which Kathy and I have noted, and we will, we will try and find out. Obviously, we weren't aware that question was going to be raised. These things crop up. It's not a perfect world, so we'll try and find the answer for you. Apologies if anybody feels that the system's gone wrong, but I think we're covered in that. We've got Councillor Kemp. It's a valid question, and we can give you an answer shortly. I don't think there's much more we can say than that.
And I have, somebody else, right, okay.
One of the reasons I stood down is because of the timing of the meetings. I work full time, and having a meeting at 2:30 means I have to leave work at 1:30 to get to the meeting. If the meetings for these were slightly later, I might be able to attend, but it's hard with all the other meetings and with all the holiday that I have to use to book these. Means I can't do it.
Thank you for sharing that. Kathy wants to make a comment. Kathy?
Councillor Jones, we have amended the times now to 4 p.m, so if that would help you.
If that's the case, then if needed, I can do it. I've had planning training, so.
And also, I just mentioned, and I absolutely agree with Councillor Collop and others, that this is a matter that needs to be resolved ASAP. Yes, we can get by with people attending, getting the rules and regulations clear, but I just wanted to mention I am having a meeting in the near future regarding this committee. And obviously, if it's not resolved, this matter, then obviously I will bring it up at that meeting. So it will be dealt with, I can assure you. I'm sure it will be. Yeah. Okay. If there aren't any more issues or comments on this matter, with your agreement, then I'll move on to item 10, which is the invitation. Invitation to Norfolk County Councillors. And we're asking members of the committee here tonight to consider whether Norfolk County Councillors where an item is covering the Kings Lynn area, whether they should be, or on what basis the county councillor could be invited to future meetings. What your views are on that. Before I invite you for your views and comments, I don't know whether there is anybody that would like to, wants or feels that we need any comments at all about this matter. Tom?
No, I think I don't have the information to hand us, but a question was raised. Kathy, can you remember where the question came from? Just before.
Yeah, Councillor Joyce.
Councillor Joyce, apologies, as to whether county councillors could be invited and what their role would be, whether they would be invited to every meeting, or could it be every other meeting, and just establishing the voting positions. I think my understanding would be that they wouldn't have voting rights, but that they could attend. And would it be useful for them to attend because they could inform the discussions that we have? So I think what we did as officers is put it back to you as chair to say you might want to seek the views of other members as to whether Norfolk County councillors could, you know, add to the rich experience of CLAC, and if so, on what basis? So whether it, you know, is sort of a helpful approach.
I would make the comment, and I do agree. One of the things I thought about was that if we are discussing a matter where the presence or the attendance of a county councillor would really be helpful, now I see somebody shaking their head, so I'll ask Odin. Nothing in this world is straightforward, is it? But never mind. Councillor Bambridge, fire ahead. You're the first one.
As a county councillor, I don't think there is any merit in a county councillor being here on all occasions. I mean, certainly not for tonight's agenda. And I think Charles suggested that a report might be made. Well, I could do that in 3 seconds because of how county is compared to borough. And I'm looking at white line markings, markings for cycle lanes and a few other things like that. And it could be over in seconds. So do we really expect somebody to come for a meeting for 3 seconds? I'm here anyway.
Yeah, I just want to make the point.
Okay.
It's not always us that wants the county councillors here. I know you are but sometimes it's the county councillor that wants to come, wants to attend.
Chairman, that's a different matter because then they could request to come on a specific item, which I think Councillor Middleton was talking about, the members' fund, but mine's virtually spent for this year.
Yeah.
So, I can find reasons to spend it without coming to this committee.
And please don't get the idea that when, that every meeting that we're looking for a county councillor to come, that isn't at all it was just really, I was thinking from my own point of view, I was thinking the other way round, if a county councillor came to me and said, I really would like to attend the meeting because of X and Y, whatever, should I make the decision, or should the members of this committee be emailed or contacted as to whether
I would add, I don't think it's necessarily about the finances, it's about the discussion. If there are things that are being discussed, they may be able to add to that discussion in a positive sense, but it's for you to decide whether you want that.
Sandra Collop. Sandra.
Thank you, Chair. To a point, I think it's a good idea, because if we are discussing something that's in that county councillor's division, then they could give us probably more of an insight what was going on, which would help us make a decision. So I am for it to a certain extent.
John.
I think this has come up before when I sort of had the pleasure of being a councillor for a few years. And I'm sure we had county councillors, we could invite county councillors on their particular subjects. I don't see any problem if they come along and give us some more information. I think we need information all the time when we make decisions, but I wouldn't want them to sort of sit here all the time and just be here. But we could invite them if there's a special interest of theirs, and they could help us make some of the decisions. I don't see anything wrong with it. Whether they would come or not is probably a different thing, but I think most of them would, if we invited them on a special thing that they're sort of very interested in, they could give us quite a lot of information. And I wouldn't want to see that go away.
Well, that's a fair point, John. I wonder, on that sort of basis, whether when notice of the agendas or whatever, or when the sifting has been completed, that a notice just sent to members of the committee saying it is suggested that county councillor so-and-so is invited because of further insight into, just so people have that information. And if there's no reaction, then, it's just a thought.
I think the sifting's a good idea. Yeah, if that would be a good time because it's a quick way. We don't want to make a meal out of this, do we? So
No.
Go through all the discussion items. I think as I've offered, you'd have officer and member input there, wouldn't you? And then invite, as exactly as Councillor Kolb has just said, to inform on a particular item rather than as a standing invitation. Does that sound okay?
Yes, and I would, as I say, I would like to, when that's completed, when the sifting is completed and the members are aware, and if there is a big issue, a big problem as to why the members of the committee don't want county council to appear, then that can be. Yeah, well, yes, afterwards, when we, So on that basis, could I ask for us agreement, or anybody got any violent anti ideas or other ideas? No? Okay, seems that we would go ahead on that basis from now on, and appreciate your comments, everybody, and officer, thank you. Yeah, well, obviously, as always, we review these things. As certain members of the whoever the administration is nationally, it's under constant review, as they always say. Thank you very much anyway. Now moving on to item 11, which is the town fund update. And we should be receiving an update.
Okay, what I've got number 10 and number 11. So number 10 is the Towns Fund update, and number 12 is the play area enhancement. They're both the same in that there are responses provided from it's Nathan Johnson for the play area and Duncan Hall for the Towns Fund. If you recall, at previous meetings, we agreed that they would always provide a quick update for every CLAC meeting and then periodically attend. And I think Duncan Hall attended last time. And it will be at the point 13 when we look at the work programme. The intention is for Nathan Johnson to be invited to the January meeting where we can have a longer discussion about the play area, and we will have a bit more progress. So it might be that we've got some photographs of installation and so on. It'll be a lot more interesting to members. But for today, you've just got me reading out a couple of bits and pieces. If I can reverse them, because the play area one's much quicker. So apologies for taking it out of order, Kathy, but Nathan's report is that this is the play equipment that we've talked about before. This is projected to start installing in mid-November, so it's imminent. Nathan, at the point that he wrote the email, which was a few days ago, is awaiting a response from the supplier. So that should be going in any day. So there's nothing much more to say than that. The Edna, looking at the far end there, Councillor Bone, the Edna Raby Street is dependent on the Salters Road development. So we're still awaiting information for that to further along. But Nathan will come along in January, presuming all things are equal, and be able to talk to you in person in a bit more detail about those things. So is that okay on the play equipment? Does anybody, I don't really know much more than that, but if anyone's got a quick question, or if they can email me or Kathy, we can pass that on to Nathan in the meantime. That's okay.
Yeah, is that okay with them? Right.
Okay. Yeah. So that's number 12. Number 11, the Towns Fund. I'm going to read out what Duncan has sent, but we can send this on to members, can't we, Kathy? So I'll do it, a quick overview of what Duncan has sent. This isn't something I hold much expertise in. Again, at the end of it, if there are questions, we can get them back to Duncan and do it through email, and Duncan will attend it, you know, in future. Sorry? Oh, he's planned for January, so you might want to hold on till January, but if it's urgent, obviously let us know and we can get that to Duncan. But this is what he's provided. I'll do it in brief. And again, I'll do my best. It's not something I'm an expert in. So the first business case has been prepared for the youth and retraining pledge. That will come to the CPP, so that's to a different panel on the 8th of December for consultation, subject to final approval on the 15th of December, and this project should start in April 2022. That's the first one. The Public Realm report, the preferred option agreed by the Public Realm Working Group focused on the route from the railway station to the river. That includes interventions like new finger posts, enhanced outdoor seating and planting, including trees, artwork trail and pop-ups. The Guildhall, activity planning underway involving a number of work stream meetings to inform the development of the business case. The multi-user community hub, plans for consultation and engagement on the project, including future use of the existing library site, due to start before Christmas, details to be confirmed by the end of the month. The next one, active and clean connectivity, lead design team appointed for the proposed active travel hub at the enterprise zone. And finally, the riverfront, marketing of the Summerfield and Thomas and Grain silo site. I think there was something in the press about that, wasn't there? Going live with the Estates Gazette today. So that's a quick readout of what Duncan said. I don't know anything about any of that. But if anybody has any questions, we will send this email to you. Please respond and we'll get a response through Duncan. I hope that's okay.
Is it on that basis, can we proceed? Is that okay? Yep, okay. Sounds like it, John. Thank you very much. So if I've got things right, we're on item 13, our work programme and cabinet forward decision list. And I ask you, as always, to consider the items for the work programme. And I ask you to note the cabinet's forward decision list. Right, Councillor Bambridge, first, Councillor Bambridge, Leslie.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure if I thought I'd sent you an email about this, but I just looked and I can't find it. At last month's, what month are we? Yeah, last month's SNAP. Again, we have made the priority the bus station, and this comes back and forth. You know, it's like a tennis match, isn't it? You know, and nothing actually ever gets done. It does for a short while, but we need something to make it more long term. Even just playing classical music at the bus station would make a difference. So I would like that to be a discussion for us, CLAC members. It might need some police presence, but it might also need the antisocial behaviour team presence, because it's just it's been years, and it's about time we did something proper about it.
Well, I'll just say, before John gives his words of wisdom, I would just say, yes, I did, and then after John, Alex, I did receive that email, and I've already beginning to write up a list of the classical music that might be appropriate, Leslie. You can do that as well, I know. Yeah. Anyway, but no, I absolutely understand and agree with your comments on that, and I did receive the email. Yeah. John.
Yeah, Councillor Bambridge, the police are due for the next meeting in January. I'm just checking that with Kathy, but So I know you're aware, but if we prompt them that we want a wider discussion about this, and they can come prepared. I can also ask for the antisocial behaviour officer to attend as well. Yep. So that'll be Andy Nedapel, and I'll be here as well. So yeah, agreed.
Right,
Can I just say, Chair, I support that wholeheartedly as well.
Yeah, Councillor Sandra Collop also has just told me that she very much supports that. It is ongoing, as you say, Leslie. You know, it's all right for a little while. And any other comments on that item, Alex?
Yes, I would endorse that, because unfortunately in South Lynn we've got some serious antisocial behaviour issues again regarding stone throwing of sadly young people in areas where they're older people living in sheltered housing. And we thought we'd suss this and there'd been some interventions last year, and I would like the committee to think about supporting a request for a targeted youth support worker, because I think that is needed. I think we need to be able to present alternative ways of going about things to young people to help. And I think this is really, really important. I can't stress how important early intervention and prevention is. So I think this would be very good to be on the agenda. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that. Leslie again, yeah.
Whilst we're all here, could I ask if anybody got a notification about the last SNAP meeting? I'd put it in my diary, so I knew it was happening, but I had to email on the day to say I've had no paperwork or anything. And Sandra contacted me, and we were assured that it was sent out to all Kings Lynn councillors, and it isn't, is it? So I will take that forward and say, make sure that everybody knows next time.
Yes, and I don't recall either, Leslie. I think I told you, but yeah. Thank you for that, everybody. And as always, I always say it, Kathy, John and myself always very willing and pleased to receive your ideas by email or whatever of items that you think need to be discussed and sorted if humanly possible. So thank you. Thank you for that, everybody. Right. I'm moving on to, it's got item 11 here, but it must be item 14, I think. Item 14, not item 11, item 14, the date of the next meeting, which is, unless it changes, Monday, January 31st, next year at 4:30. And here, it's to be here in the Assembly Room, which seems to be normal. So thank you, everybody, for contributing. Thank you, those that are not present in person. Thank you, officers and members. Safe journey home, and I close the meeting at 17:55. Yeah, many thanks.